but I am not responsible for her death. This is not a knife that I ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. Thank you.
In a Virginia courtroom in 2025, a man named Banfield stood before a judge and described his dead wife as a caring mother, a loving nurse, and a woman he loved deeply. The jury had already decided he stabbed her to death, and here is the detail that will stay with you long after this video ends. The judge had seen evil in his courtroom only twice before in 18 years on the bench. This was the third time. Before we get to what the judge said that made this sentencing one of the most extraordinary on record, you need to understand one thing about this case that most coverage completely missed. Banfield was not just convicted of murder. He was convicted of a crime that, 5 years ago, would have sent him to the execution chamber. That fact alone reframes everything that happened in that courtroom. Banfield's wife was Christine. By every account in the record, she was exactly who he described her as: a nurse who volunteered for extra shifts during COVID, who signed up for vaccination clinics, who enrolled her daughter in dance lessons and showed up to every recital.
I loved her very much, despite what you may think of my affairs. Our marriage worked for us. It wasn't something that I looked to end. It was told to other women that I was never going to leave Christine. That was always how it was said.
She was present in every way a person can be present.
During COVID, she volunteered to take care of many of the people that were sick and struggling. She signed up for extra shifts. She signed up for vaccination clinics. She cared for her daughter. She enrolled her in dance lessons. She was there for recitals.
Her husband, meanwhile, had been conducting affairs and telling the other women involved that he would never leave Christine. Not because he loved her, because she was useful to the life he had constructed. When that construction became inconvenient, he did not ask for a divorce. He built a plan. That plan is what the judge called scheming for months. A master plan involving so many moving parts: deception, manipulation, and the deliberate targeting of a completely innocent man named Joseph Ryan. Ryan was lured into a trap. He was shot in the head. He was blinded.
It is impossible to comprehend what Joseph Ryan experienced, seeing you enter the room, being shot in the head, blinded, hearing you instruct the co-defendant to shoot him again. And Christine, to imagine her final thoughts as she initially thought you were there to save her from what she thought was a brutal attack, and then to see you over her stabbing her again and again with a knife in her neck. Her final realization.
And while he lay there, Banfield instructed a co-defendant to shoot him again. Christine, in those same moments, initially believed her husband had arrived to save her from what she thought was a random brutal attack. She did not understand what was happening until she saw him standing over her, stabbing her in the neck, again and again. Her final realization, according to the judge, was that this was all his doing. Her final thoughts, the judge said, were of her daughter.
That this was all you're doing, and in her final moments thinking of her daughter. The sentence I impose today reflects not only the law, but the judgment of the community. The jury did not find you credible on the stand. To testify as you did shows the court that you still think that you are the smartest person in the room. One would hope that someday you will become tortured by what you have done to Christine.
Now here is the moment Banfield chose to use in court before sentencing. He stood up and delivered what sounded like a eulogy. He praised Christine's nursing. He mentioned the dance recitals. He said he loved her very much. He said their marriage worked for them. He said, and this is the sentence you need to hear twice, that there was never a knife he held in his hand, that he never stabbed her. This is the man a jury had just unanimously convicted of aggravated murder. This is the man who told the court he was not responsible for her death while standing in the aftermath of a verdict that said otherwise. The judge was watching every word of it.
Christine cared very much for her family and friends. I'm not trying to diminish in any way what her life was. She truly was a caring mother, a caring wife, a loving nurse. But I am not responsible for her death. This is not a knife that I ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. Thank you.
All right.
When the judge spoke, he did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He told Banfield that in 18 years on the bench, sentencing hundreds of defendants, he had encountered true evil exactly 2 times before. Most of the people who appeared before him, he explained, had made terrible decisions in moments of anger, or were struggling with addiction, or had simply lost control in ways that destroyed lives, including their own. Those cases weigh on him. He said they stay with him long after the hearing ends. This case did not weigh on him. He said he carried no burden and felt no hesitation.
They were not inherently bad people, but they made terrible decisions and suffered the consequences. Sentencing in those cases is difficult. It weighs on me, often long after the hearing is over. Only 2 times prior to today have I encountered something different in my courtroom. 2 individuals that carried no remorse, calculated, and planned their violent crimes and left many victims and devastation in their path. As I listened to
He sentenced Banfield to life in prison without the possibility of parole, without good conduct allowances, without earned sentence credits, without conditional release, life in the penitentiary for the rest of his natural life. Then he added the firearms charge, 3 years mandatory, consecutive. Then child endangerment, 5 more years, consecutive. 1 sentence running into the next, each one landing like a door closing permanently.
All right. Mr. Banfield, a jury of your peers, after hearing all the evidence, has found you guilty of count 1 of the indictment 2024-666, aggravated murder of 2 people in the same act or transaction. They found you guilty of count 4 of 2024-666, aggravated murder of 2 people within a 3-year period, count 5 of 2024-666, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, and count 1 of 2024-873, child endangerment. In accordance with Virginia law,
Here is the legal detail that most people watching the coverage of this case did not fully register. The charge Banfield was convicted on, aggravated murder of 2 people in the same act or transaction, was Virginia's capital murder statute until 2021. That year, Virginia became the first southern state to abolish the death penalty. The law changed. The charge did not. What changed was only the maximum punishment. Before 2021, this verdict meant lethal injection. In 2025, meant life without parole.
although you have been found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated murder, the court can only sentence you on 1 count of aggravated murder, which will be count 1 of 2024-666. The statute requires a sentence of life imprisonment on this count, which is now the highest penalty one can receive in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This exact statute was our capital murder statute until Virginia abolished capital punishment in 2021. You should understand you were found guilty of crimes that 5 short years ago would have carried a sentence of death. That reflects the severity of your crimes and your actions.
The judge told Banfield directly you were found guilty of crimes that 5 short years ago would have carried a sentence of death. That is not commentary. That is the statutory record. Banfield's survival from the execution chamber was not mercy earned. It was timing. Life without parole in Virginia is not a sentence handed down often. The judge described it as a punishment reserved for a very small number of individuals, those whom the community has determined should never walk free again. To put this in concrete terms, Virginia sentences thousands of people every year. Life without parole, true life, no release mechanism, no review, no possibility. That is a category almost entirely reserved for the worst acts the Commonwealth has ever prosecuted.
Life in prison is a punishment reserved for a very small number of individuals, those whom the community has determined should never walk free again. It is a harsh sentence, but in this case, it is a justified one. In the 18 years I've been on the bench, I have seen hundreds of defendants appear before me, and I have had the arduous task of sentencing these individuals. In the vast majority of these cases, people made mistakes, were struggling with substance use disorders, or acting in anger, choosing violence in a moment that changed everything.
Banfield is now in that category permanently. The judge also said something about Banfield's courtroom behavior that this audience needs to understand as a legal signal, not just as an insult. He told Banfield that testifying as he did showed the court that he still believed he was the smartest person in the room. That is not a casual observation. When a judge makes a credibility finding from the bench during sentencing, he is documenting for the appellate record that the defendant's testimony was not believed, that the defendant's demeanor reinforced the jury's verdict, and that no mitigating weight was given to anything the defendant said. Banfield's speech before sentencing, the eulogy, the denial, the declaration that he loved Christine, did not help him. It confirmed to the judge what the jury had already decided. He calculated everything except how transparent he was being.
Of the community. The jury did not find you credible on the stand. To testify as you did shows the court that you still think that you are the smartest person in the room. One would hope that someday you will become tortured by what you have done to Christine, Joe, Christine's daughter, and their families, but nothing I have seen suggests that you will. The level of cruelty, calculation, and inhumanity in this case reflects something far deeper than anger or impulse. It reflects evil, which is why I carry no burden and find no hesitation in sentencing you to life.
The broader principle at work here is one that this audience already senses but rarely sees spelled out this clearly. Remorselessness is not just a moral failure. In the American legal system, remorse or its absence is a documented factor in sentencing. A judge observing a defendant who shows no recognition of harm, no grief, no accountability, is observing something that has direct legal consequence. The judge in this case said explicitly that he hoped Banfield would someday become tortured by what he had done to Christine, to Joseph Ryan, to Christine's daughter. Then he said, and this is the line, that nothing he had seen suggested that would ever happen.
Christine, Joe, Christine's daughter, and their families, but nothing I have seen suggests that you will. The level of cruelty, calculation, and inhumanity in this case reflects something far deeper than anger or impulse. It reflects evil, which is why I carry no burden and find no hesitation in sentencing you to life.
He sentenced him anyway, immediately, without hesitation, because the law does not require remorse for sentencing. It only requires truth, and the truth in this case had already been established by 12 people who heard everything Banfield said on the stand and believed none of it. Christine's daughter is the figure in this case who will carry it longest. She was present in the violence Banfield created. The judge noted that Banfield did not just take her mother from her. He placed her in the middle of the horror he made.
Evidence in this case, and listen to your testimony, it is apparent that I am once again looking at that same kind of evil. The disregard of the life of your wife, someone you supposedly loved, is almost unfathomable. Scheming for months a master plan involving so many moving parts, including deception and manipulation, luring a completely innocent man into your deadly trap, continuing on after the murders without a care, and not once thinking of the impact on Christine's daughter, the unspoken tragic victim of your behavior. You did not just take her mother from her.
He sentenced him anyway, immediately, without hesitation, because the law does not require remorse for sentencing. It only requires truth, and the truth in this case had already been established by 12 people who heard everything Banfield said on the stand and believed none of it. Christine's daughter is the figure in this case who will carry it longest. She was present in the violence Banfield created. The judge noted that Banfield did not just take her mother from her. He placed her in the middle of the horror he made.
Placed her in the middle of the horror you created. She is young now, but one day she will understand your true self, and she will understand what you took from her, which is everything. The loss of her mother, who will never be a part of her life as she grows, the loss of her family and the security she lived under. All of this is lost based on your calculated and selfish behavior. It is impossible to comprehend what Joseph Ryan experienced, seeing you enter the room, being shot in the head, blinded, hearing you instruct the co-defendant to shoot him again.
She is young now. One day she will understand what her father actually is. She will understand what was taken from her, which the judge described as everything, her mother's presence as she grows, her family, the security she lived under.
On count 1 of 2024-666 aggravated murder, I sentence you to life in the penitentiary for the rest of your natural life, without the possibility of parole, without good conduct allowances, or any earned sentence credit.
That child did not appear in Banfield's statement before sentencing. He mentioned Christine's daughter once, briefly, as evidence of what a good mother Christine was. He did not mention what his actions did to her. The judge did. What this case means for you is this. When you watch a sentencing and you hear a defendant speak, listen for what is absent. Banfield spoke about Christine's virtues without once taking responsibility for ending them. He named her love for her daughter without once acknowledging that he orphaned that daughter. He declared his innocence in a courtroom where his guilt had already been determined beyond a reasonable doubt by 12 of his peers. None of that is unusual. What is unusual is a judge who sees it clearly, names it precisely, and puts it in the permanent record without flinching. The rule of law does not always deliver justice. In this case it did, not because the system worked perfectly, but because one judge with 18 years of difficult experience recognized evil when it was standing in front of him, and said so out loud, for the record, so that no one watching could ever claim they did not know what they were looking at,